Somewhere beneath the sand of modern Iraq lie the ruins of a city that invented almost everything you take for granted. Writing, law, mathematics, time itself. Babylon didn't just build an empire, it built the operating system the modern world still runs on, and almost no one knows it. To understand why Babylon matters, you need to understand the world before it. For thousands of years after the first cities appeared in Mesopotamia, places like Uruk, Ur, Eridu, civilization was fragile. A bad harvest could collapse a kingdom. A broken levee could destroy a city. The system worked, but barely. There was no lasting structure, no framework strong enough to hold everything together. And then, around 1894 BCE, a small, unremarkable city on the Euphrates began to rise. It wasn't the biggest, it wasn't the oldest, it was just another Amorite settlement. A few thousand people, mud brick walls, a local temple. But what happened next would change the trajectory of human history. Because Babylon didn't just grow, it engineered a new kind of society, one built not on temporary power, but on permanent systems, laws written in stone, writing designed for administration, astronomy turned into mathematics, religion organized into state infrastructure. This is the story of how one city invented the operating system of civilization, and why we're still running on it 4,000 years later. The name Babylon means Gate of God. But for most of its early history, it was barely a gate at all, just a small city-state surrounded by bigger, older rivals. That changed with one king. Hammurabi ruled Babylon from roughly 1792 to 1750 BCE. And what he did was something no ruler had attempted before, at least not at this scale. He wrote down the law, not suggestions, not guidelines, law, 282 of them, carved into a black diorite stele over 7 feet tall, placed in the Temple of Marduk for every citizen to see. And here's what makes this revolutionary. Before Hammurabi, justice was arbitrary. A judge decided, a king decided, a priest decided. Power was personal. Law was whatever the powerful said it was. Hammurabi changed that. His code made the law external to the ruler. It existed above the king. Even the king was bound by it. The stele literally shows Hammurabi receiving the laws from Shamash, the god of justice, a message that these laws didn't come from a man. They came from a higher order. Now, some of these laws look brutal by modern standards. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But that's the point. They were standardized. The punishment was fixed. It didn't depend on the mood of a judge or the wealth of the accused. Well, partially. The code had 3 tiers: free citizens, commoners, and slaves. The same injury carried different penalties depending on your class. The system wasn't fair, but it was systematic. And that was the invention. Because once you have written law, you have predictability. Predictability creates trust. Trust creates trade. Trade creates wealth. Wealth builds cities. The entire chain starts here. Hammurabi didn't just give Babylon a legal code. He gave it a framework, the first known attempt to organize an entire society through codified rules. And that framework is still the skeleton of every legal system on Earth. After Hammurabi, Babylon fell into centuries of obscurity, invaded, conquered, absorbed into larger empires. For a long time, it looked like just another forgotten Mesopotamian city. And then, around 626 BCE, a new dynasty seized power. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, and its king, Nebuchadnezzar II, would turn Babylon into something the world had never seen. Nebuchadnezzar didn't just rebuild the city. He engineered it into a statement of absolute power. The walls. Babylon's outer walls stretched over 18 kilometers. They were so wide that 2 chariots could race side by side along the top. The Greek historian Herodotus later wrote that the walls were 100 feet high, and while Herodotus exaggerated, the real numbers are staggering enough. These walls weren't just defensive, they were performative. They told every approaching army, do not even try. The Ishtar Gate. This was the main entrance to the inner city, covered in brilliant blue glazed bricks, a color no other civilization could produce at scale, decorated with over 500 dragons and bulls in golden relief. The processional way leading to it was flanked by 120 golden lions. Imagine walking through that. You're not entering a city, you're entering a manifestation of divine authority. Etemenanki, the temple tower that likely inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. 7 tiers, possibly 90 meters high. A ziggurat so massive it dominated the entire skyline. And at its base, the Esagila, the Temple of Marduk, where priests maintained the cult that legitimized the entire state. This wasn't architecture for beauty alone. This was architecture as infrastructure of power. Every wall, every gate, every tower reinforced the same message. Babylon is eternal. Babylon is divine. Babylon cannot fall. And for a while, that message was true. Of all Babylon's wonders, one captures the imagination more than any other: the Hanging Gardens. According to ancient accounts, Nebuchadnezzar built them for his wife, Amytis, who missed the green mountains of her homeland in Media, a towering series of tiered gardens, rising like a green mountain in the middle of a flat, sun-baked city. An engineering marvel, water lifted from the Euphrates to the highest tiers through an unknown mechanism, possibly an early chain pump or Archimedean screw centuries before Archimedes. But here's the problem. Archaeologists have never found them. Koldewey, the German archaeologist who excavated Babylon for nearly 2 decades, starting in 1899, found walls, gates, temples, palaces, but no gardens. Some researchers suggest they were located in the southern palace. Others argue the descriptions match Nineveh, not Babylon, and the stories got confused over centuries. And yet, Babylonian texts from Nebuchadnezzar's reign describe the king building an elaborate palace with a replica of the Amanus mountain, complete with terraced gardens. Cuneiform tablets reference sophisticated irrigation systems far more advanced than neighboring civilizations. Whether the Hanging Gardens existed in the form we imagine or not, what matters is this: Babylon was capable of building them. The engineering knowledge, the water management systems, the architectural ambition, all of it was real. The gardens represent something larger than themselves, a civilization that believed it could reshape nature itself. And that belief, that nature can be engineered, that the world can be redesigned to serve human needs, that is arguably Babylon's most lasting invention. Babylon's visible achievements, the walls, the gates, the towers, are staggering. But the real power of Babylon was invisible: writing. The cuneiform script that Babylon inherited from the Sumerians wasn't just used for epic poetry. It was an administrative tool: tax records, grain inventories, labor contracts, land deeds, marriage agreements. Babylon turned writing into a system of governance. Without writing, you can't run an empire. With it, You can coordinate millions of people across hundreds of kilometers. Babylon didn't invent cuneiform, but it perfected its use as a technology of control. Mathematics. The Babylonians used a base 60 number system. That's why we have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. Every time you check the time, you're using Babylonian math. They could solve quadratic equations, calculate square roots, and track the movements of planets with precision that wouldn't be matched in Europe until the Renaissance. Astronomy. Babylonian astronomers didn't just watch the stars, they modeled them. They created the first known mathematical models of planetary motion. They could predict eclipses. They divided the sky into 12 zones, the origin of the zodiac signs still printed in every newspaper today. Their star catalogs were so accurate that Greek astronomers centuries later simply copied them. Time. The 7-day week. The division of the day into 24 hours. The lunar calendar adjusted to match the solar year. These aren't natural facts. They're inventions, constructed systems, and they all trace back to Babylon. This is what makes Babylon different from every other ancient empire. Other empires conquered territory. Babylon conquered the way you think. Its systems didn't collapse when its walls fell. They simply migrated into Persia, into Greece, into Rome, into the modern world. In October 539 BCE, the greatest fortress on Earth was about to be tested. The Persian king Cyrus the Great had been expanding his empire for years. Babylon was the last major obstacle. Its walls were impregnable. Its army was massive. Its king, Nabonidus, was unpopular, but still dangerous. Cyrus didn't attack the walls. According to the Nabonidus Chronicle and Herodotus, the Persian army diverted the Euphrates River upstream, lowering the water level enough to march through the riverbed, under the walls, and into the city while Babylon celebrated a festival. The Babylonian troops stationed at the river gates had either fled, been bribed, or simply weren't watching. By dawn, Persian soldiers were inside the city. Babylon fell without a major battle. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay document from the Persian court, presents this as a liberation. The Babylonian population, it claims, welcomed Cyrus because Nabonidus was a tyrant. The truth is messier, but the outcome is the same. Babylon didn't burn, it didn't collapse, it was simply absorbed. And maybe that's the most chilling fate for a city that believed it was eternal, to be conquered so quietly that history barely noticed the moment it stopped being independent. Babylon fell in 539 BCE, but its systems didn't. The Persians adopted Babylonian astronomy. The Greeks studied Babylonian mathematics. The Romans built their legal codes on principles first carved into Hammurabi's stele. The 7-day week passed through Jewish tradition into Christian and Islamic calendars. Base 60 math traveled through Arab scholars into medieval Europe. Every courthouse is a descendant of Hammurabi's code. Every clock face is a Babylonian instrument. Every astrological chart traces its coordinates to Babylonian star catalogs. Babylon didn't just fall, it dissolved into everything. And that raises a question most historians avoid. If Babylon's systems are still running, if we still measure time the way they did, if our laws still follow their structure, if our math still uses their base, then did Babylon really end? Or did it just become so embedded in civilization that we stopped seeing it? Most people think of Babylon as a ruin, a pile of broken bricks in the Iraqi desert, a metaphor for arrogance and collapse. But that's the wrong story. The real Babylon is alive. It's in your watch. It's in your laws. It's in the way your city is governed, your money is counted, your sky is mapped. One city, 4,000 years ago, invented the operating system of human civilization. And we never wrote a new one. We just kept updating the interface. This is Headline Circus, where history hides its secrets and we dig them back up. If this story pulled you in, subscribe, because the past isn't dead. It's the code you're running right now.